What is up, harvesters? My name is Ken. Welcome to Hobby Harvest. So today is plant time here in southeastern Wisconsin. I'm going to go over what I do, when I plant, how I plant, what I plant, all of those things. And we're doing it today because you guys might be able to hear a little bit. It's pretty windy today. This wind is blowing in a front, so we are planting just ahead of a rain. There's a big rain event scheduled for tomorrow. I'm hoping that that actually does extend into the next couple of days after that as well, but I'm pretty confident that we are going to get some moisture down on this seed once it is planted in the next day or so. So that is always something you want to do, plant in front of a rain. But at some point, you can't wait for a rain forever. You need to get that seed in the ground. I talk about that in another video. I'll link that at the end of this one so you guys can check that out if you want to. So let's get planting. And so I seed into standing buckwheat. And so this buckwheat I'm walking through is about 5 to 6 feet tall right now. It's 7 weeks old. Ideally, you might want to plant a little before that, but it hasn't gone to seed yet. So as long as we plant into it before it goes to seed, that's all we're really looking for. So I seed into this standing buckwheat. This buckwheat is used as a summer cover crop to choke out all of the weeds, as well as it's used as a green manure. So all of this green and lush buckwheat here is going to get crimped down on top of the seed, and that's going to help act as a thatch for the seed, but also it's going to help put nutrients back into the soil. So it's working as both a manure and a thatch. And that thatch helps by keeping moisture in the ground. So even if you aren't getting a ton of rain, this thatch from this buckwheat will really help to hold whatever moisture in the soil you are getting. And then of course with that thatch on top too, it makes it harder for things like turkeys to pick through and eat all your seed before it can germinate. So that is an issue I have out here, and because of that I up my seed rates just a little bit just to make up for whatever the turkeys are going to eat out of here. But it's funny because this buckwheat is just buzzing right now. It's probably hard for you guys to see on camera, but there is a bee on almost every single one of these stalks of buckwheat right now, and they're not going to be too happy when I crimp it all, but that's why I put a pollinator blend in the corner, so they'll at least have that to work with until the rest of the stuff gets growing in here. So what I plant is a diverse mixture of things. So half of the plot gets a brassica blend. That's turnips, radishes, kale, all sorts of different varieties of each of those. That gets put in half of the plot. For those of you who have been following my videos, you know that this food plot is in the shape of a boomerang. So when I say half the plot, I mean half of the boomerang, not like half and half. So it actually follows the full arc of the boomerang, half of that in brassicas, and then the other half is planted in peas and beans. And now those are forage peas and forage soybeans. So what that means is instead of putting a lot of their effort towards creating a seed head, they put that effort towards creating a lush green plant, which is a lot more browse resistant, provides a lot more food for the deer than trying to work on building all those seed pods, since the deer are eating the leafy greens anyway. And yeah, they might eat the seed pods, but you're not going to get as much food for them out of that if you do it that way. So the other thing I plant with that half though is I'm planting a cereal grain as a nurse crop, and this year I'm using oats. I usually just use whatever's cheapest, whatever I can get my hands on. And so what that nurse crop does is prevents the beans and peas from being nipped off when they pop up. So those oats are going to pop up. They're going to be nice and tender. The deer are going to come on here. They're going to eat those oats, hopefully, long enough just to get those beans and peas established so that they can handle that browse pressure. So we don't want them nipping those beans and peas off right away, or they're just going to kill them. We need to get some growth out of them first in order to get them to last all season long. And so what I do for seed rates is I plant those brassicas at about 6 or 7 pounds per acre. That's your typical seeding rate for brassicas. You'll feel like you're not putting hardly any seed down on the ground at that rate, but just make sure you are using a spreader because those seeds are so small, it's really hard to spread by hand. And then on the other half of the plot, I'm planting soybeans at 100 pounds per acre, and then peas at 50 pounds per acre, with that nurse crop of oats in there at about 40 pounds per acre. And now I am very strict on that. I perfectly calculate out the size of each of my plots. There's several apps out there that you guys can use. I'm sure you guys are aware of them, but they'll help you calculate the area of your plots, and then you know how big they are. And then I weigh out to the pound or half a pound how much seed I put on each plot. And the reason for that is so that I can adjust year to year. So if I have a situation where a plot gets browsed down, like my peas and beans get nipped off, I know I can up the seeding rate of them, but also the seeding rate of that nurse crop the next year. So I chart this like year to year to make sure that I'm adjusting accordingly. So just because I give you these seeding rates, that's a good place to start, but you'll need to adjust year to year based on your area, your deer herd, your soil, all of those things. So it's good to just like keep notes on all of that stuff, and then just make sure you're making the appropriate adjustments year to year. So now that all of the seed is planted into this standing buckwheat, it is now time to crimp all of the buckwheat. And all I use for that is a four-wheeler with a lawn roller behind it. And I don't even fill water into the lawn roller. An empty lawn roller is more than enough to crimp it. But on my northwestern Wisconsin property, I've even used like crimping boards. Like you imagine like the crop circle boards, just a piece of plywood. I do screw a 2x4 on top of it just to strengthen it up a little bit, tie some paracord rope onto it as a handle, and then literally just stomp all of the buckwheat down. Now those are smaller plots in the woods, and I've done videos on those. You guys can check those out on my channel as well. But it is kind of funny to do it that way, but it does take a lot longer. So it's a lot more easily accessible to get the four-wheeler down here. And since I can do that, I'm just going to roll all of this over and crimp it that way. And then I'm going to spray it just one time with glyphosate. Now it is windy today, so I am going to be very careful about my overspray. I might end up using the hand sprayer around the perimeter of the plot because I don't want to hit my corn or my switchgrass or my pollinator blend or my other things that I have along the border of the plot, especially things like my red osier dogwood and all of those shrubs that I'm hoping to keep growing to have some winter browse out here as well. So I'm gonna get to that. So as you guys can see, that lawn roller does an amazing job at crimping the buckwheat. There's not many things more satisfying in this habitat management thing than having a nice crimped food plot with buckwheat crimped and your seed laying down ready for the season to start. So as I was saying before, this buckwheat will act as a thatch, but there is moisture in each one of these stalks as well. Some of that moisture will stay down in the soil. Now it's not enough to soak your soil and get germination, but you're definitely starting with now some moisture in the thatch that you just put down, and that will help to hold even more moisture because the thatch itself doesn't have to suck up the moisture. So like I said, I'm planting in front of a rain here. So if it rains tomorrow like it's supposed to, none of this thatch has to soak anything up, and all of that water is going to go straight down into the soil, and then the thatch can dry out and hold all of the moisture down in it. So that's just another added little benefit. I mean, that's why you throw straw down on top of grass seed when you plant it in your yard. It helps to get germination, it helps protect the seed, and it helps to protect those plants when they're in their infancy. Now, I'm still gonna drive over this a few more times to spray. Like I said, it's windy today because we have that front moving in. So I'm gonna have to be careful about my overspray, but I'll probably use the four-wheeler sprayer just to spray the center of the plot, and then I'm gonna hit up the edges with my hand sprayer so I can be more precise on where I'm putting chemical down. And I'm trying to show you guys why I spray, but this buckwheat did such a good job at choking all the weeds out, and I'm not too worried that this buckwheat's gonna pop back up and grow, but every once in a while you're gonna get a couple of weeds. I see some over here I can show you guys. So you're gonna get just a couple of weeds every once in a while. Like something like this, that's why you're spraying, because otherwise this thing's going to pop right back up and it's going to start growing, and you don't want that into your food plot. So the advantage of putting the buckwheat in is it does send you into your fall planting season with a weed-free plot. As you can see here, this is actually really, really good. Sometimes it's not going to turn out this good for you guys, but you want that weed-free plot because you don't want any weed competition, especially with those brand new seeds coming up. It makes it a lot harder for them to get established if they have weed competition. As you can see out here, I'm going to have very little weed competition, if any at all. Especially spraying that one, spraying a Gly. I'm going to definitely make sure that nothing pops up anywhere out here. And that's what you want. You want to bring your fall-focused forage seeds into the fall hunting season without any competition, because those weeds are going to deteriorate very quickly coming into the fall here. And that is not something you want in your food plot come hunting season, because they're just taking up space that one of your fall focused forage seeds could have been growing in instead. Now I just want to show you guys quickly why I put my food plots in a Boomerang. I talk about this in other videos, so those of you that watch my videos are well aware of the advantages of doing it. But now that the buckwheat's crimped, you can really see how awesome having a Boomerang shaped food plot is. So I'm going to spin you guys around here quick. I'm going to walk you through the Boomerang quick, and I'll explain why I do this to my plots. So I was standing in the back corner, and you can see as we walk this way, this probably just looks sort of like your normal open food plot, and you'll be able to see the blind off to the right side up here. But as you head up through the plot here, keep an eye on the left here. Now, in all of this wild growth over here, I planted a whole bunch of red osier dogwoods, yellow twig dogwoods, willows, box elders, all sorts of shrubs that are very good for the deer population. And the idea is the deer cannot see through that. Now, all of that native vegetation there, that's gonna die off, and this isn't gonna work exactly like I need it to year one. But by year 2, 3, 4, I'm hoping this all fills in. And as I pan this way, these are all red osier dogwood and box elder in here. So I'm hoping that what this is here continues to fill in here to this point. And the idea is the deer won't be able to see around this bend. So as we come this way, you'll see that you still can't see that other corner of the food plot. And so as we come this way, you guys can see this mock scrape that I'm experimenting with here. We'll see how that turns out, especially now that the buckwheat's down and the deer can get at it easier. But as we come around this corner, you can see there's still quite a bit of food plot over this way. And then that works vice versa too. So if a deer is on either side of this Boomerang, either over here or over here, you can see I've already walked far enough that I can't see this back corner of the food plot over here. So what this helps you guys do is it helps you pack more deer on a food plot, because deer do not like being near each other. They like being in their little family groups, but outside of that, does are very mean to each other, to other does fawns, and even to the bucks when the bucks are in velvet. That's why you typically aren't going to see them together this time of year, unless of course it's near a food source. But even then they try to take their space, and that of course is until those bucks get hard horned. Then those bucks will come in and they will relate to those high quality food sources and kick the does off if they so choose to. And then obviously the rut is a whole different magical time of the year where they behave completely differently altogether. But the idea here is that you could have a doe family group down in this end of the food plot down here, and have another doe family group over in this corner of the food plot, and they won't put social pressure on each other. Now, the other thing that this does, especially when we're trying to hunt bucks, is what will happen is if a buck steps out on this end of the food plot down here, he needs to walk all the way over to where this mock scrape is in order to be able to see if there are any does over on this side, and vice versa. And so if he comes to this pinch point here to check to make sure there's no other does on the plot, he's standing right in front of the blind. So that is designed perfectly to get a buck right in front of the blind for a bow shot. This mock scrape's here to help with that as well, but depending on how this does, because it's this erector set of a mock scrape that I'm just experimenting with, I may take this down before the hunting season if the bucks seem to be avoiding it. So I'll be then just worried about this pinch point here to get the bucks out here so that they can see that the food plot is clear of does. So those of you who maybe have like a square shape or an oval shape or a rectangular shaped food plot, you guys might be noticing that your bucks will come out and just stand on the edge of the plot, or maybe stay a few yards in the woods depending on how thick the edges of your food plots are. And they can stand there and they can see that there are no does out here on the plot, and they turn around and go right back in the woods. And you might be sitting there in your stand going, oh man, did he smell me? Did he hear me? Was something just not right? Well, no, he was looking for does, and you very easily showed him that there wasn't any out there. So you definitely don't want your food plots in like a big open area. You want them to be compartmentalized. And then you also want your food plots to be compartmentalized on your land. So like if you were gonna put in 2 acres worth of food plots, I would put in 4 half acres of food plots instead of 1 big 2 acre food plot, because you can compartmentalize your deer. You can stick more deer on a smaller parcel of land, and they don't put that social pressure on each other because they each have their own little space to go to. And so that is it. We got the food plot in. We are just hoping it rains tomorrow. There's a high percentage chance it's going to, and even if it doesn't tomorrow, it's dry enough that it might not. It'll at least push it into Sunday, and we'll hopefully get that rain on here. I'm almost positive we will, and that's gonna help this germinate right away. We won't have to worry about the turkeys picking through it or whatever, but we're gonna be done with the food plot stuff this year. I still have a few other things I need to catch up around here. I did a video last week on all of the little things you need to do before the season, a lot of like tree trimming and stuff. I'll link that video at the end of this one too. So make sure you guys go and check those out. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's free to you, it doesn't cost you anything. It just tells YouTube you like the content that's on this channel, and they'll help share it with other people that are like-minded, watch the same types of videos that you guys do, and it'll help grow the channel that way. So I'll catch you guys on the next one.